Hello and welcome to Rights and Recourse, a program that tackles issues affecting your rights and matters of legal recourse. My name is Dumile Matez. Remember, you can also be part of our discussion today by tweeting us at Rights Recourse or calling our studio line on 011 714 5497 or 5498. You can also SMS your views by sending the word recourse to 34025. Alternatively, email your thoughts to rightsandrecourse@sabc.co.za. All African societies are multilingual, yet most children do not enjoy the normality of going to school and be taught in their mother tongue or a familiar language. If they do, it is not for long. The development of African languages in high status is held back by the hegemonic status of English and another ex-colonial language brought about by colonial conquest and post-colonial language policies. This is the view of Professor Carol Bloch of the University of Cape Town, and judging by all accounts, others would say she has touched a raw nerve. Today on Rights and Recourse, we ask the question, who should be responsible for the teaching and development of mother tongue education? Is it the state or the vigilance of the custodians of the language? This week, the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, spoke about the importance of promoting various languages. Let us take a look at this insert.
Language is very important. The equal promotion of all our languages in South Africa remains a critical part of our nation-building effort. And this is entrenched in our Constitution. Cabinet approved the National Language Policy Framework, and this framework aims to promote the equitable use of all our 11 languages, the official languages. This enables the citizens of our country to access government and to be able to interact with government, to get information from government, and indeed to get services from government as well. Currently, government is implementing the Use of Official Languages Act of 2012 as a means of promoting the previously marginalized languages and multilingualism, and also to foster the equitable treatment of all our 11 official languages.
Joining us today on today's topic are Ms. Marie-Louise Samuels, Director, Early Childhood Development and Acting Director, Curriculum Implementation from the Department of Basic Education, and Ms. Corrine Brits, Manager, Language Affairs from the Afrikaanse Taal en Kultuurvereniging, and Professor David Musoma, Deputy Chairperson of the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon.
By the way, Prof, I've been told by these two ladies today is the International Women's Day, and they say they want to clap us, that's why they sit in the middle.
Indeed. It's just appropriate.
First of all, let's go back to the very first question that I asked. Anyone can answer this question. Probably I should refer this question to you, Marie-Louise. Whose responsibility it is to develop and teach mother tongue education at our schools?
Dumile, in terms of the legislation, the responsibility of making all official languages accessible for children in the public education system is the Department of Basic Education. So we do have the responsibility of promoting all the languages. We certainly have done that with respect to the grades R to 3. In that all of the materials that are developed for home language learning, or as you have spoken about earlier, mother tongue education. And so all of the materials that are produced by the department are produced in all 11 languages. This year we have introduced South African Sign Language as well, and so we have started implementing the curriculum for the advancement of South African Sign Language as well. And so all 11 official languages and South African Sign Language are operative within the schools.
Isn't the teaching of mother tongue education at the Department of Basic Education still a pilot project?
No, the introduction of African languages is a pilot project, but the provision of teaching and learning in your home language has been there since the inception.
Professor Musuma, your commission has a long name, and many of us struggle to remember the name. You've got the CRL Commission. What is the role of the CRL Commission?
The CRL Commission, in terms of the mandate of government, is to protect and promote the rights of all cultural, religious, and linguistic communities. Our task is to ensure that no language disappears. But we are not in the business of developing languages. Our sister commission, the PANSALP,
yes,
is mandated to develop the languages, the literal part of it, dictionaries, and many others, which will then feed into what she had just said, the basic education, because until the language has a structure and a standardization, you can't teach it. So it's important that it has to have standardization, which would allow that the language be taught as a sort of a comprehensive and structure, so to speak.
Corinne, earlier we mentioned the fact that in the introduction we are talking about whose responsibility it is. It is just as well as the responsibility of the state from a financial point of view, or a resource point of view, but it's also the responsibility of communities to advocate that their language be used and they need to be spoken to and be taught in their mother tongue.
Yes, we have the view that it's the responsibility of the language community itself as well. Not alone, but we need to give the platform for using the language. And that's what we do at the Artikafia. We give the platform for Afrikaans. And we would like to give it to the others as well. Or to give them advice how to do it.
We haven't seen this kind of advocacy that the Afrikaans groups have regarding their language with other African, especially your African language groups.
I might not agree in the sense that it might not be as organized as the Artikafia, but there are formations, that promote the different African languages, and you have a strong lobby in DEFSA, the Deaf Association of South Africa, in terms of the promotion of South African Sign Language. So there are formations, that promote language. At the department and, together with PANSALP and others, we also try to ensure that all the languages are catered for at the public libraries as well. So it's not only in the schooling system that you want the languages to be accessible. You want it to be accessible when people go into the library. They should be able to pick up a Tshivenda book if that's what they would like to have.
I went to many public libraries who do not have African language books.
Yeah, but I think that the plan is that is what it is that should be,
it's still a plan.
Should be in place.
I think what we must understand, that language is power. Language is a medium through which culture, even religion, is communicated. If resources are not placed at the hands of communities, you can talk about development of languages. You can talk about the rights that these communities have about languages. Languages will never develop. The beauty with the Afrikaans is that they had what you call a first start. Afrikaans was not indigenous language at the time they came to our shores. But through resources that the previous governments put, they were able to come with a standardized language. For instance, in universities, you'll find that a textbook written in America gets what we call a wraparound in Afrikaans, giving access to African students to the material, which is not the case with other languages. So there's a sense in which resources need to be channeled to make languages as developed as we would like them to be.
I want to come back to something that the Deputy President mentioned in his speech in Parliament, responding to this very question. Obviously, one of the things, although he was not directly speaking to what you are talking about here, one of the issues that was asked was why are government departments also not using African languages when they address people who come to them for services?
I don't want to be a spokesperson for all of the departments, and particularly on that matter, which I think is quite a sensitive one. But I think that what I have found in this Department of Basic Education, as well as in when we had the Department of Education and the Department of Higher Education and Training was with us, when you find a problem at the desk, in the sense that you don't understand the language, it is your responsibility to find somebody in the building who can mediate the language. And that should be the practice. We also have been told and been given the responsibility of setting up a language unit in the department, and that language unit will be on a regular basis translating the policy documents that we have. Because at the moment, the policy documents might be in English, they might be in English and Afrikaans, but we would like to make it accessible for all 11 languages as well as South African Sign Language.
When we come back, we'll continue our discussion here around the issue of mother tongue education. If you'd like to join us on today's discussion, please call us on 011 714 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Recourse, and email us at rightsrecourse@sabc.co.za. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. We were hoping to have Pansalp here because we wanted to put emphasis on the rights of pupils to be taught in their mother tongue. We thought we should bring the CRL Commission. The Deputy President went on to emphasize the importance of training and implementation of various languages by government departments. Let's hear.
We have promulgated quite a number of acts that deal with language. And one of those is the Use of Official Languages Act, and a number of other instruments. And what I do know is that the utilization of various languages is now being promoted actively in our educational institutions. And the Minister of Higher Education is on record as saying that at the higher educational levels, we want to be promoting more and more, even in our universities and TVETs, the utilization of the various languages that are used in our country. So training is going to become an important component that follows that, because with the focus that we are now beginning to have on this, training has to follow. And I'm confident that that training is going to continue happening. The Constitution of our country endears us all to not only use various languages, but to promote their usage. And indeed, the sign language as well falls in that category because it is also mentioned in our Constitution. So utilization not only of the official languages, but various other languages that are used by South Africans. have to be promoted, would like to see them being utilized more and more. And as part of that, we'd like to see people being trained in the utilization of this language. And the association that has been formed, which is called the South African Language Practitioners Council, is also aimed at regulating the language profession. And through this association, I'm sure that quite a lot of training will also take place.
I agree totally with what the Deputy President had said. But our experience is really exactly the opposite. And that what he said there remains theory in government. You know, this House adopted the language bill, we had debated it, and now it must be implemented. And the feedback from government is that they are not serious to implement the requirements of the bill. The Deputy President might know that the implementation already had to be postponed once because departments could not reach their deadlines. And if they don't move very quickly, they're going to miss the deadlines again in May. So my question is, what will the Deputy President do to put pressure on the Cabinet Ministers and the departments to avoid another postponement, because I'm worrying about we're going to do for that again, or then another court case, because that's the only way to force them to implement the bill. Thank you.
Interesting debate there between the Deputy President and Mr. Mulder, but let me come back to the team here. We played that clip because we wanted to demonstrate that if this is not done at department level, at government level, it is not going to happen at school level, at primary school level, at grade 1 level.
Yes, I think the important thing is that we need, as a language community, we need to ask for information in our mother tongue. We should not assume that everything is in English, or that English is the more important language in a situation. We should actually, I don't want to use the word, but we should demand Afrikaans or a mother tongue.
No, we must demand, we must demand. Professor, 21 years after the attainment of a democratic South Africa, we are still grappling with the fundamental right, this fundamental right of our children being taught in their mother tongue.
First and foremost, we need a process of decolonization of our minds. Our languages have just become languages of decoration. Many of our indigenous people, and at least some of the more enlightened ones, don't even respect our languages. For example, you go to a court in the rural area where the magistrate is black, the prosecutor is black, and the audience is black, and the matter is heard in English. Just imagine what it means. You go to offices and look for pamphlets. You get them written English or Afrikaans. Precisely because languages, indigenous languages, are not languages of commerce, of business. Even if you were to teach those languages, if they don't have a corresponding usage in business, in commerce, or even in law, it's a waste of time. For instance, if you have that language, you want to make an application, how do you feel it? You feel it in English or in Afrikaans? What is the purpose of learning a language if it's not utilitarian? So these are the issues that we have. Hence, 20 years down the line, we're still groping in darkness in this regard.
No, I totally agree. We have a problem with the language attitude in our communities. We don't respect our own languages.
Marie-Louise, quickly, I just want to come back to this issue of what goes into developing a curriculum for kids who are doing grade 1. What goes into developing a curriculum in terms of language?
All of the curricula that is developed will the starting point would be what is it that you want the children to be able to know, do, and understand. So it deals with both competencies as well as skills, but on the other hand, it's also about knowledge. So, for example, you do want children to know the structure of the language, you know, how to constitute sentences, etc. And depending on the age group of the children, that would determine, you know, the level of proficiency. I wanted to go back to the issue that was raised earlier about, you know, the fact that African languages are not within the commercial space, and argue that we shouldn't be deterred from providing education in home language, you know, because the skills and competencies that you acquire for all of the other subjects, if you are able to be proficient in your home language, you are going to be able to, you know, be better at what it is that you do in the other subjects. We really would like a situation where, you know, particularly in areas that have one or two languages other than English and Afrikaans, that you would find that, for example, in the post offices, in the banks, in those areas, which we don't have at the moment. So I agree that we need to ensure that the languages are utilized within the business space as well. But it comes back to, you know, language practitioners and language activists that need to demand the, you know, what is already written as rights within constitutions. So in the constitution as well as in the educational law. So for example, you know, who determines what languages are taught at the school? It should not be the principal at the school that does that, or the teachers at the school, but it is the responsibility of the school governing body. And the school governing body is made up of parents. And so we really need to take our responsibility as parents at schools to ensure that if we want particular languages to be taught at the school, that we put in place mechanisms to make that happen.
Professor, in the past, when I started working at the SABC almost 35 years ago, there used to be, because I used to work in the language department of the SABC, and there used to be language boards for every language group. What happened to those boards? I know they fall under PANSALP.
Yeah. Yes, they do, and I think PANSALP would be a better sister organization to speak about that. But just to speak about their importance, because the development of languages really has to also be vetted by those who have the know-how. Standardization of languages, even universities, those are the roles and responsibilities of language boards, which are embedded in communities, which are the protectors and the promoters of the language. So that's a key in essence. But from our side is to make sure that the languages that we have bequeathed from the generations that have gone before, those languages are important for development and protection. And we'll do almost everything to make sure that they're protected. But the danger is our ability to develop them. And secondly, to ensure that the language should not become an instrument of division. It must serve the purpose for which it's there, which is nation building and social cohesion.
I am reminded here by the Afrikaans dictionary called HART. Recently, they brought out a Xhosa dictionary, new Xhosa dictionary. I think it was a project that was done by Fort Hare. But unfortunately, I haven't seen a copy of this thing. But I've seen a copy of HART each time I walk into an office.
Yeah. And I think another thing I want to emphasize is the information we give to the parents. Sometimes I get the idea that I think that English is the only way to raise my child. And I don't know how we should actually address it, but there should be some form of campaign to inform our parents that mother tongue in education is very important. And if we do that, I think we will have learners attending those schools, not going to former Model C schools, because that's another problem, I suppose. And then we will see, is it Xhosa, Afrikaans dictionaries, or is it Zulu English dictionaries?
Just hold that thought there. Let us hear. There's a caller on the line. Good afternoon, Rezani.
Hi, how are you, sir?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Fine. Sir, I would like to say the following with regard to this issue. I think both Department of Education in our country are to blame in this matter, because they seem to be treating English as the superior language to the other. I'll give you an example. I do have a son who passed matric last year very well. But because he did not obtain 50%, no university or any this training education can take him. He obtained all these required symbols on other subjects, but because he obtained 49 instead of 50, he was turned down in almost every university that we went.
I didn't pick up the last part. Thank you, Rudzani. I didn't pick up the last part Rudzani was saying around the issue of English, but it is true. We find many people in discourse, when we have this discourse about language, saying, what are you to do with Zulu? What are you to do with Xhosa? What are you to do with Shivenda? Because people do speak English out there. Why should we allow that? Because I've got examples of the Chinese, the Japanese, the the countries that are leading the economy in the world. They speak their language. They don't care whether you guys, they'll do business with you, but they speak their language.
I think it goes back to what I said earlier on. Our dignity has been stripped off. To the extent that we look down upon our languages and we look at English as a measure of success. A person who speaks good English is termed to be clever, as opposed to a person
to be a clever
who understands and speaks good African languages. The big boss in companies would not employ you on the basis of your good mother tongue language. They want proficiency in English.
Prof, I just want to hold it there. I just want Marie-Louise to respond to what Rudzani was saying there. Rudzani said the Department of Education is to blame because they tend to elevate English above all other languages.
It's very difficult because I think there were two issues that Rudzani had spoken to. The one was the access to universities and what the requirements are in terms of the access to universities. And I think that is dependent on what field you're wanting to study at the university as to what you require in different subjects. So I think that is the one issue, and I'm not going to address that one. The point that he makes about the 49 and 50%, again, I think that it's difficult to take it out of the context of what it is that the child did with respect to all the languages. Because in the way in which the pass requirements are structured, it doesn't, for example, suggest that you need to have 49% 50% for English, you know, and it again depends on what is the field of study that, you know, that the learner wanted to go into. I think that the point that Rudzani makes, which I think we all need to be looking at, is if we're wanting to promote African languages, the use of African languages as a language of learning and teaching in the schooling system, that it shouldn't only be offered in the foundation phase, that we should be looking at extending that to the intermediate and the senior phases. And even if learners are wanting to do their national senior certificate in Chivenda,
we'll come back to this point. We'll come back to this point. We've got to go to a break. If you'd like to join us like Rudzani did, you can call us on 011-714-5497 or 5498 or tweet us at Recourse. Stay with us.
This week we are taking you around the continent, telling you stories about what makes Africa, Africa.
We now head to the Kenyan coast, where we meet a man using needles to fight a growing drug culture.
A recent study revealed that there are 850 drug addicts in Diani alone, with over 220 using injectable drugs such as heroin.
In my community, I've seen a lot of these people suffer.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back, and before we continue our discussion, let's go back and to another part of that insert. I'd say the government must now walk the talk. Let us have a look at this insert.
That Honorable Mulder stem saam met my, ek is baie bly. Wat gaan ons nou doen? We are going to obviously follow this matter up. Ons sal dit voortgaan sodat dit moet mooi hanteer word. It must be followed up properly, and I'm glad that you have raised it. If we have passed the law, it needs to be implemented, and if there are any blockages, those blockages need to be removed. And it's a matter that can be given attention to, and I'm glad you're raising it, because we need to implement the laws that we have passed. So thank you very much for being so constructive and raising it in the manner that you are. Thank you.
Well, there you are, the Deputy President speaking there in Parliament on Wednesday when this question was raised. Professor, one of the things that concern me, are we not being too ambitious by making 11 languages official languages?
I don't think so, because if you were to choose which one, the question will be, what criteria are you using?
But we don't use them.
They are being used, it's just that they're not used in the manner they are supposed to be used in the marketplace of languages. But they're being used, because communities out there use these languages for interaction, for doing their own activities. But what is important in what the Deputy President said is that there are structures of government which have been tasked to do this. And these structures must be effective. For instance, PENCEL, our commission, and other commissions, our responsibility is that our plans that we draw for the year must give effect to the law that has already given precedence to the place of languages. So actually, it's not the government failing to do this. The government's intention in terms of the law is that languages must be developed. But remember, government is acting through its agencies, departments, universities, schools, and these are the agencies which must deliver. I think from that inset, there is an undertaking on the basis of that to make that happen. So if there are problems, let them bring them to government, but the issue is that languages must be developed equitably.
It's not even a law that actually says that. The Bill of Rights, Chapter 2 of the Constitution says everyone has the right to use the language and to participate in the cultural life of their choice, but no one exercising these rights may do so in a manner inconsistent with any provision of the Bill of Rights. In addition, the point is made, persons belonging to a cultural group, religious or linguistic community may not be denied the right with other members of the to enjoy their culture and their language.
Yeah.
I think that what you're mentioning clearly articulates the fact that you have the right. Mm-hmm. But I think lower down you would see that it has a qualifier which suggests that it's where practicable. And I think it's that where practicable that becomes the contentious issue. If you are in a school and there are 11 languages offered, 11 languages are spoken in the school, what it becomes the language of learning and teaching at the school. And I think that it's that component that has bedeviled the situation, the where practicable. And I think that some people have hidden behind that for the introduction of languages at these schools.
I think I'm happy you raised that point, because I wanted to go to a point of the Recourse schools. The Recourse schools where apparently the Afrikaans parents said their children must be separated from the other children, and many people saw this as racism. Was it racism, Karin?
Well, that's a difficult question. If you look at Afrikaans, 40% or even less than 50% are actually white speakers of the language. So if you look at Afrikaans, it's actually not, it's one of the least racial languages in South Africa.
So I don't belong to that less than 40%. But ek praat ook Afrikaans.
Exactly. Yeah, according to statistics, 600,000 Africans regard Afrikaans as their mother tongue. I think we have to be creative. if we want to deal with Afrikaans and the other languages, we want to use Afrikaans as to give access.
There's been some creation. You say was creative. There's been creation in Kofifi, in Sophia Town. They started Tsotsital, which was creative, which was born out of Afrikaans.
It's a wonderful language, by the way. But we want to use Afrikaans to give access. And I think if that's the thing, if we take that as our departure point, that we want to use a language, not necessarily Afrikaans, as a way to give access to information, to education, we should look at that. We should not look at a language as a color.
Let me come back to something else. Probably all of these problems that we have 11 official languages and that one needs his language, and we mix and mesh because the vendors understand their own, the course understand their own, they all mix and mesh. What about multilingualism? Couldn't that be a solution? Prof?
Yes, I know that in universities, some of their policies on multilingualism seems to be in place. But the issue is the development thereof. Does it work or it doesn't work? Some universities have opted to introduce languages in their tuition model.
I think we should encourage multilingualism from an early age.
Yes.
At grade 1, 2, and 3, and 4, multilingualism.
But that is it's based on the ability of communities that live side by side. I'm able to speak Tsonga, Sotho, other languages as well because of my proximity. So it's not a question of learning it in class. Because I played with kids who spoke that language, then you can learn it. So when we have integrated societies, then we can succeed in that multilingual exercises. But the problem we have now are the spatial areas. Communities live at far distances. I mean, if you look at the gated communities today, where you have, if you have a black family in that, it's a red taped environment where to be admitted in that area, you have to have $1 million to buy a house. So there are a number of black people there. So the possibilities of integration, it's quite minimal. So what is important is to build new cities, new communities in order to encourage multilingualism.
It's not a solution. I know the Johannesburg City Council is busy doing exactly that. Yeah. Or the Gauteng province.
Yeah. Can I just say that, you know, the promotion of multilingualism is also within the schooling sector. And the difficulty that I would have of separating English from Afrikaans in the way that it was recently spoken about is that it does, within the current context, lead to a class of white-only children and a class of blacks. So if that is the situation, then you have to look at it and say, this is not about language anymore. Because what are we protecting when we do that? So I think that we don't only have communities that are multilingual, but we also have in the very family, which is this contentious word of mother tongue education. Mother tongue education has to be seen in a much more open and literal way.
And broader context.
Yes, than the mother's language, because that is not the situation at the moment. The mother and father might be speaking different languages and come from totally different contexts.
Yes, you're right, because Carol Bloch, Professor Carol Bloch says the children are not taught in their mother tongue or a familiar language. That's the emphasis, or a familiar language. A language that if I go out, I'll hear this language being spoken out there.
Yeah. But now, you see, all those kind of qualifying words become difficult because what is familiar? Is it the language that is spoken in the house? Is it the language that is spoken in the community? What becomes familiar about the language?
I want to go back to something else. I haven't forgotten about you, Karin, but I want to raise this issue. One of the many problems that is a drawback to this whole issue of mother tongue education are the resources. Do you have the resources at the department?
As I said earlier, we, from grade R to grade 3, everything that is developed in all languages. So, for example, we have mathematics in all 11 languages from grade R to grade 3.
Let's just hear what Johannes has to say. We have a call from Johannes. Johannes, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Johannes. What's your question?
Yeah, my question is like being I'm a South African and I'm teaching Afrikaans.
Yes.
And we always, like in schools, we find one of the panelists said, we should be able to go and take the language to the intermediate phase. But my problem, I've been a teacher for a long time, and we always got a problem when we look at our kids because at the end, the parents decide. At high school level, you find out that the kids have an option between Afrikaans and Zulu. And we find most of our kids, I'm talking about black kids, they tend not take Zulu, even though they speak Zulu. And it becomes a problem because at the end, as a system, and looking at the school, you have this Zulu teacher who won't be having a job because all the kids are moving to Afrikaans. We end up having Afrikaans, having 2 classes, and we have Zulu with 15 learners or 12 learners.
Thank you, Johannes. Let's take Johannes' case. Johannes says he's a teacher. He's teaching Afrikaans. But then there's a choice made at school. Those who want to be taught in Afrikaans go to the Afrikaans, and the Zulu kids say, I know my Zulu, so I need to learn to speak Afrikaans, and they move over to the Afrikaans class. As a result, the Zulu teacher doesn't have a job.
That's the kind of complexity that I think we must all address. And it's not just what the school has to do or what the education department has to do. It is about the demand that the parents are going to make on the school. Now, we can't take responsibility for parents deciding that they want the children to do English and Afrikaans. That is something that we advocate against, particularly if home language is not being included as a language that is being offered by the learners. And so we have to join hands, the school community, the language communities, parents, etc. All of us need to take hold of the situation and deal with it.
Let's take this call from Johan in the Northwest. Johan, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse. Hello, Johan.
Hello, this is Johan speaking, and I just want to ask a question about the implementation of African languages into the schools again. And I would like to know from the department what the situation is, because we are developing materials for African languages to be implemented into the schools again. And the process, where the process is currently, and when can we expect us to have a phone call or information about the screening of those books, because we've developed Setswana, Xhosa and Zulu courses for the grade 1s so that it can be implemented in 2016. But up to now we haven't got any information, and I think it's very important. I'm a fluent speaker of Setswana also, and I would like to see my children and the children of the South African future, or the new South Africa we are living in, to be able to speak an African language also, because my mother tongue is Afrikaans. But if I can tell you examples of how good it is, Karin also knows Setswana, and you see day by day how important it is to understand each other and to make South Africa even better.
Thank you, Johan.
I'm very worried about the implementation and the correct implementation of the African languages.
Thank you, Johan. I think they are all gunning for you, Marie-Louise.
Very popular. I think Johan is asking two different issues. The one is the progress on the incremental introduction of African languages. And just to quickly say that it started in grade 1.
Can you hold that for a moment, and just when we come back, just remind me that we just start there and just respond to what Johan was saying. If you'd like to join us, call us like Johan is done, and Johannes, you can phone us on 011714 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Rights and Recourse, or email us, give us your views about the topics you think we have covered this year at rightsandrecourse@sabc.co.za. We'll be back after the break.
Cameroon's economic capital, a unique art collection is on display. Titled Yesterday's Memory, Tomorrow's Memory.
We are trying to preserve this heritage despite many things that have changed in the designing, embroidery and the model.
If I'm telling you, you don't like it, I call it defeat.
Join Musam Khalipi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. Madam Louise, without wasting time, can you go back to respond to what Johan was saying?
The incremental introduction of African languages began last year in grade 1. It's been extended this year, so all of those schools that have implemented the third language at the school are carrying over into the grade 2 this year. There was only one province that did not start with the program with the other provinces, and that was the Free State, and so in the Free State they are starting with grade 1 this year. So that is just about the progress. I'm saying that Johannes also asked a second question, and that is, when are we going to call for materials to be screened? Now that implies that Johannes is in the business of writing textbooks or workbooks or that kind of thing. And the procedure within the department is that they would make the call when we require it for the whole system. But right now, we are producing our own books. So the materials that are being used for the introduction of African languages is being produced by the department, and that is being provided to the schools that are implementing. It is still a pilot, because we have to be sure about what it is that we're taking into the whole system, and we must draw lessons from the pilot in order to ensure that we don't make mistakes when we take it to all of the
earlier when I'm sorry to be referring all these questions to you. Earlier when I spoke about resources, I wanted to I meant do you have the teachers? Because in many former Model C schools, I have witnessed that they use teachers who are not proficient in the language to teach the language.
I agree that it's a challenge. It's not about not having the teachers available. It's about being able to say, how do we make sure that the schools that require those teachers actually employ the home language, you know, people that are proficient in African languages.
I think,
so
Louise, let's not say,
the complexion of
I'm sorry
schools.
to be interrupting you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to be interrupting you. Let's not say the school, let's say the system.
Yes.
The system needs to take the people in.
Yes. The departments, the provincial departments employ teachers, and where the languages or subjects are being offered, they need to ensure that those subject offerings are able to be made. With the pilot, because this is just a pilot at the moment, with the pilot, the school has been given the responsibility of choosing a range of options, and within that, it is using existing teachers or having itinerant teachers that are going to be responsible for a range of different schools, etc. So I'm saying it is a school choice at the moment as to what teacher they use.
I'm not ignoring you, Prof. and Karina. I just want to take this call from Mr. Mhlongo, calling us from the Vaal. Mr. Mhlongo, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon. How are you, Mr. Mateza?
Thanks. How are you?
I'm okay, Baba. My question is, how is the importance of the South African children? Because of, especially the African children are having more subjects than these other, the Afrikaner and the English children. How can the Department of Education decide to all those, even in the side of English and Africa, they learn African, languages like our children, because our pass rate of our children is less than because they have more, subject at schooling.
Thank you very much.
That is my question.
Yes, I hear your question. I think what Mr. Mhlongo is saying, your African kids have to learn probably 3 or 4 languages, and this adds to the number of subjects they have to learn. And this could also be a drawback to them not really passing their matric with good marks. And what is the department doing about that? I think that's what we are trying to do by introducing African languages, incremental. Just repeat that.
African languages, yeah. I'm not sure that is. I know that is not accurate. All of the learners in the schooling system are required to do the same number of subjects. So there isn't any particular group that has to do more than any other group. Where I think I would like to go with what Mr. Mhlongo has asked is that a learner who's being taught in a language different to their own home language, that might affect the performance. Not that they're going to be getting any more subjects than anybody else.
But Louise, I just need to go to a break, our last break, I think, in this segment. If you'd like to join us, you can call us. You can SMS the number we gave earlier, or else you can email us and tell us what you think of the programs we've had throughout the year. Or you can also tweet us at Rights Recourse. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Rights and Recourse as we take another caller from Martin from Polokwane. Martin, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse. Hello, Martin. Is Martin there? Martin, are you there?
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Martin. What's your question?
Yes, how are you, sir?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm okay. Just want to find out from you, on this African languages project, how do they hope to implement it? Because there are so many African languages, 11 official languages. Secondly, is it compulsory for all kids to learn African languages? And thirdly, is it not just a deliberate policy by government to develop only kids for the local market? Aren't you supposed to be developing kids for the global market? Will our kids be able to speak Chivenda in the UN or any of those countries they go abroad?
Thank you, Martin. There's nothing wrong. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin. There's nothing wrong with speaking Chivenda in the UN. Let me come back to, there's that question again. Are you teaching kids for the local market or are you teaching them for the international market? Earlier we made an example of China, Japan, and all the other countries, including the French, although they are, although they are closer to the English. I was telling somebody the other day that Jacques Chirac was actually a journalist in New York. Therefore, he's able to speak English, but he would never speak English when he was president.
The issue here is that we tend to not understand the value of language and the kinds of confidence it creates in an individual. And because we come from a past where one language was given superior status or so, we tend to believe that this is the only language. And when we meet, as you indicated, persons from other countries who have been schooled, did science, technology in their own language, science in their own language, and they articulate those concepts in their own language, they have the confidence to engage anyone. And at times we provide interpreters because they don't want to use either English or French. They speak their own language.
Even if they know.
Precisely, precisely. It is the confidence that you must have.
Prof, I just need Corinne to get a word in. Corinne, you said you're going to speak to me in Tswana.
But for the viewers, I will switch to English. Now, multilingualism is very important, and especially at the Arctic Fair. I know it might be a surprise to you because you normally associate Afrikaans with Arctic Fair, but we say that Afrikaans should be promoted as part of all the other languages. And to give an example, what we are doing is I teach Setswana at the Arctic Fair head office because we realize that to engage with the other communities, we need to at least acknowledge the language. And you actually open up worlds, not only to the Setswana or any other language, but also opening them up to you. I actually took some of my colleagues to Soweto, and I have to add white colleagues to Soweto.
Do you still have the branch of Arctic Fair in Soweto?
Yes, we have 2 branches there. We actually teach Afrikaans in Soweto, 5 different points. But they asked me, is it safe to go to Soweto? And they came back and I said, but it's wonderful. Did you realize how the people opened up to us because we spoke Setswana? And I think if we can get that working in South Africa, it will be a totally different
I'll give
world.
the final word to you, Marie-Louise.
Thanks very much. I think that I want to reiterate that we will continue to promote all languages in the country, the 11 official languages as well as South African Sign Language. Secondly, we will continue to promote multilingualism because that it's not only about learning a different language, but it is about social cohesion. It is about the acknowledging the diversity in the country, but respecting the diversity. And so we will continue to do that. The introduction of African languages in the system is a pilot at the moment, but we do want to work towards a situation of having every child in South Africa going through the schooling system learning 3 languages. And so when it is compulsory, it would be that we have to make it accessible for all children.
Well, the panel is with me here. They are once, even if they didn't say that our solution could be in multilingualism. President Nelson Mandela said, if you speak to a man in his language, you speak to his heart. This has been Rights and Recourse. This program is repeated at 10 tonight and at 5 on Monday morning. From all of us in the studio, thank you to our guests and good afternoon.